Good day, everyone. Today's topic is probably, I think, one of the most discussed topics. How do you know if your relationship is
So
in
you're
trouble?
come to this place, you're like, what is
Okay, I don't know what's going on in the
What is
background, but
wrong?
let's stop that. Uh, the most important thing that I think is interesting about relationships as a whole is I think most of us spend a lot of time he said, she said, analyzing the other person's behavior, trying to interpret things that may or may not be true. And we take all this vast amounts of information and we try to process it through our logic brain, first and foremost. And it's usually at odds with our emotional part of who we are. And so, because of the disconnect when we have early trauma, our emotional pain and our what we're seeing in our physical life, we try to match the story. So it kind of goes like this. You have a feeling. It could be any feeling. You could be looking at your partner and you could misinterpret or interpret something that they said or did, and it strikes a feeling in you. So a feeling gets coming forward, good, bad, and ugly, and you want to grab a story in your present environment that will match that feeling. Now, this is one of the things I think that is so hard for people to really wrap their heads around because the feeling is real. The story, though, that we create is all twisted into a logic and into our ego mind that really doesn't often match the feelings that we have. And I think that that's one of the hardest things for us to really get to. I've been studying emotional pain for a very long time, 30 plus years. First wanted to understand my own and then went on to try to understand, well, what happens when we have these early trauma points? What happens when we have this early pain points? How does that early foundation in our life show up in our friendships? How does it show up in our relationships? How does it show up when we parent? How does this all show up in every aspect of our life? And the reason why I wrote this relationship course was I felt that there wasn't a very clear understanding between these two systems. You have an emotional system and you have a logic system, a very conscious present moment, dialed in into every situation, holding on for dear life in every situation, sometimes knuckling it through because we're trying to control the very feelings that we either want to avoid or repress or not have happen again. And so if you think about that, when we ask the question, what do we do about, or how do I know that I have problems in the relationship? The very first thing to start to look at, and this is the most important thing, is are you just having feelings? And feelings and emotions are often buried in our subconscious. They are often from the past. They often don't have anything to do with our present moment. But in the present moment, it feels intense. It feels real. It feels that we are absolutely dialed into this and we have carved this whole story. And then now it's like a hamster wheel and now it's off to the races and you are barreling down the road. And the hardest part of all of that is to really decide, wow, this is no longer serving me. And if it is no longer serving you, we have to dial into what is the core, what is at the core of these feelings before we give it story. So let's run through a scenario. You have a partner, you're in a relationship. It could be long-term, it could be short-term, it could be brand new. And you are each getting to know each other in different ways. You are having feelings that are coming forward. And anytime that we have feelings that come forward, we often try to control them. And so when you are in relationship with someone else, it's natural that you are going to start to have feelings. And it doesn't mean that you're feeling for them. It means you're just experiencing emotion. Your emotions are coming forward. Your insecurities are coming forward. You may be experiencing old pain. The fascinating thing after studying this for so long, I always say that, relationships that come into our life are often here for some type of learning. Oftentimes they are, in many cases, for great love. Other times they're really here to poke the bear. And when I say poke the bear, they're just here to potentially stroke inside of you something that is remaining for you to heal. But we immediately go into this ego overdrive. Oh, my partner's this. Oh, they're doing this to me. Look at them. Blame, shame, blame, shame, blame, shame. They're not like this. If you were like this, I wouldn't feel this way. We go into all of these cycles of behavior that mostly are just not true. Oftentimes, whatever that person is in your relationship is just trying to figure out their own feelings and emotions. Remember, you're both experiencing oftentimes mirrored existences of what is left to heal within yourself. But when we have problems, we want to control them. We want to give them a story. So we move into, I got to control this emotions and these feelings. I've got to create the story as to why I feel the way that I do. And the third thing, and now I'm going to blame and shame the person that's with me so that I don't have to feel this way. Now, again, there are exceptions to this rule, meaning that sometimes somebody is deliberately trying to hurt you in the present moment. And in those cases, I would take a complete step back and say, do you want to continue this relationship? If someone is gaslighting you, has narcissistic tendencies, is being abusive, is demeaning, talking down to you, all of that toxic behavior is an indicator that that person is deeply wounded and broken, period. You cannot love that out of them. You can't be their punching bag for that experience. You can't have them change. You can't force them to change. You can't haul their ass to therapy if they're not willing to change or look at any of their woundedness. And the most important part of that, if that person is behaving in any of that way and it's causing problems in your relationship, that fish needs to go back to sea immediately. Someone that is in that cycle is not going to change because you want them to, or because you blame them and shame them and said, you're making me feel this way. If they're not willing to take 100%, and this is absolutely the most important, 100% of their own behaviors, emotions, and feelings, and take ownership of it, you cannot make them do that. So you have two choices. When we step out of our codependent addiction, we have choices. When we're in our codependent addiction, we don't believe we have a choice because maybe you have children with this person. Maybe they are your financial supporter. Maybe they own the house. Who knows? There's all these different scenarios. That's how the ego trips us up, because it creates life situations that force you to stay, or the illusion that you should stay because of these other circumstances. Well, I can't move to a different house. Well, why can't you? You know, those are the things that we have to start to analyze. And so we compromise our very value structure of who we are to be with this person, to settle for this person, to accommodate this person. We think we're turning a blind eye, or we're, being the better person. When you are being the better person, oftentimes you're probably being a doormat. And if you're being a doormat, you're in your codependent state, because now you think that if you are here, this person will get better. And this is the greatest myth of all time. You cannot love someone into healing. You can't. They have to choose it for themselves and decide to go deal with their shit. That is really ultimately the end. And you have a choice to decide to see if that's going to happen immediately, taking accountability and ownership by doing this work, or you leave this relationship behind, because you shouldn't stay in a relationship when someone is not committed to their inner work. If you have problems in your relationship, it's a red flag to tell you that one or both of you have healing work to do. Period. That is the only thing that is happening. There is no analysis that you need to give this relationship. There is no additional focus you need to give this relationship. If there are problems, and if you don't feel 100% great in your being, then you need to examine what is left in you to heal. Now, it can always be one or both of you that really do have to go on a healing journey. When we are on a healing journey, these are the signs you need to be aware of. The first thing is, are you taking 100% accountability for everything that you feel? at all times, in every moment. These are your feelings. And if you are having feelings and emotions and you're giving it a story, then you are moving into your codependent addiction. See, when we have feelings, the most uncomfortable part for anybody that's ever been wounded in our life is to just be in our feelings without giving it a story, without trying to make it something else, without trying to deny it or avoid it or numb and stuff it with drugs, alcohol, and another person, and more sex, and more money, and more stuff. When you are just with your feelings, you are allowing them to just be, period. It doesn't need anything more than to allow the feelings to be felt. And for you to go inward with the curiosity and compassion and to say, what is it in this moment that I have to heal? Can I heal it? And the answer is yes, you can heal it. But it begins with taking full accountability and ownership for your feelings. The second part of this is to understand that when you had emotional pain, two things got injured in our emotional pain. And you've probably heard me talk about other videos around the system of emotional pain. Emotional pain is a system. Three things happen in that system, but two things get injured. Two functions within the human get injured in all cases. One is the inability to delay gratification. And this is really important because we are addicted to swiping right, left. We go online, we get everything at our fingertips, food, binging. We don't have to be uncomfortable really with very much. We can really work our way around all of that inability to delay gratification. But when it comes to love and relationships, it's absolutely a function you need. It's actually the most important function. Because if you can just be within your feelings, you will never settle for garbage behavior from anyone ever again, because you can just be with you. And if you can just be with you, you can allow all of this to go by you until you can be with someone who also is committed to their inner walk and inner journey and can just be in their feelings and owning their feelings in full accountability without all of this projection and looking on the other side of the street. Then you know that you're on the path to healing. Now, this is so important because the inability to delay gratification means that we can't be uncomfortable with just feelings that we have. And if we can't feel our feelings and be in our emotions, they stay in the body. They get buried in your subconscious until the next life situation, as Eckhart Tolle would say, happens again. And you say, oh, look at what he's doing. Look at this, look at that. He's this, he's that, she's this, look at this, blah, blah, blah. Everything outside of yourself. So then now you're back into storytelling. And it all comes back to the central premise that you didn't deal with your feelings in the first place. These emotions that you own in your body are often old pain. And when I say old, decades before your 10th birthday old. You suppressed and repressed all those feelings of your initial heartbreaks, of your initial feelings that you were not worthy of love. And you buried them within yourself and they moved to the back of your subconscious. But that is what is in charge of your life in relationships. It's so important to understand that. That's what's in charge, nothing else. Not this present situation, even if the present situation is quote unquote bad and you have all this logic story around it, your reaction and your response to it is what tells you whether this is a present moment or if this is an old pain. If you are reliving these moments over and over and over again, different people, different cast of characters, you're in the spiral of your codependent addiction. And that's what you keep bringing to you. And the reason why you keep bringing it to you is because the soul wants you to say goodbye to it. And it's only in these relationships that we start to become activated. Hence, back to the central question, how do I handle problems in my relationships? The answer to that simply is take the inner walk. That's it. If you have problems in your relationship, you need to go inward. There is something in you that still wants to heal, that needs to be released. And there's something in them that needs to be released, and they need to take the inner walk. And when you do that, you move out of trying to stuff and numb and stuff your feelings. And it allows the muscle around repairing delayed gratification to come forward. Now, the second thing that gets injured in emotional pain from old pain that you bring alive every day in our lives today, you can walk around anywhere and this is just old pain, old pain, old pain. There, we carve this wonderful delusions of storytelling, but ultimately it's just old pain. We want it to be the present moment, but oftentimes it's not. And again, I will caveat, unless someone is physically abusing you, emotionally abusing you right now in the present moment, in this present moment, chances are it's old pain. And chances are it was old pain that brought this person to you in the first place. And it's probably old pain that's still keeping you tied there, hoping that this time it will be different. The famous Einstein doing the same thing, expecting a different result. And this is where we get really clear in the aha path and the true aha in all of this. The second thing that really gets injured that people don't really think about is empathy. We assume that empathy is how we are empathic for others. So you'll often hear a codependent who occupies the M, who does everything for everyone. They believe that they spout incredible empathy because they're always doing things for other people. And it's actually a delusion and quite a fallacy. They have no more empathy than anyone else. But what they do for people is part of their inner agenda to control the situation so they don't have to feel pain. And their love and belonging is equally just as injured. So when we think about this, empathy is really empathy for the self. That is the first thing that gets injured. So when you are a child before your 10th birthday and you experience this emotional pain, which everybody does, we look for an emotional scorecard. Oh, well, my trauma was more intense than yours. Or worse, you don't think you have any emotional pain because your parents were still together and you had this wonderful existence of your life. And if you did, terrific. It still doesn't mean you didn't have emotional pain in different ways. And so emotional pain is the injury that we experience when we disconnect from this idea that we were always loved, that unconditional love was our birthright. It's that disconnection. Now, for every single person, the disconnection is different. It could have been subtle if you're sensitive or empathic. It could have been overt if someone literally abused you as a child, and that caused a disconnect from your emotional beings. All of these things, when people do disconnect, it's because they want to protect themselves, but they disconnect from this notion that they were always loved. And when we disconnect from that notion and from that belief, we move into our ego functions and we move into our addictive states and we move into our codependent states. So when you ask someone to feel genuine empathy for the life that they've lived, they'll tell you how they survived it. They're a hero of the situation. They'll tell you how resilient they are. But if you ask them, do you feel genuine sadness that you missed this part, that you've been disconnected? And if you ask them to feel genuine empathy for that path, many people refuse to give them even an ounce. They won't even give themselves an ounce. They're so busy whipping out their stick, putting themselves into shape. Like, I got to work harder. I got to do this. If I stay, I get a hero cookie for staying with this person. And this is me and my valor. No. Forget all of that storytelling. And it comes down to, have you mourned the things that you didn't get? Have you mourned the disconnection from source, from the source of knowing that you were always loved, whatever that source looks like for you? We were born, and babies are born, and we know this in science now, with the expectation that we would be loved. We were born that way. We were born with this idea that we would always be loved. But something happened. Something happened, and it changed how we see the world. It changed. And that break in the spirit got wider and wider, and the disconnect got greater and greater. And the more we lived in our ego paths and in our conscious brains, separated from our soul and our source and our emotions, when we didn't allow ourselves to just feel our feelings, when we disconnected, we separated from our true self. Everything that we've done now from that disconnection, until we heal this core root, it will show pervasive problems. You can't avoid them because we're all living in that codependent, addictive, emotional pain state. We're trying to get rid of the pain, and we're trying to use human beings in order to get rid of the pain. But here is the real skinny. Human beings are powerless. We are. We don't have the power to heal someone else's pain. We can be a friend, we can be a guide, we can be a partner, but ultimately that responsibility is up to you. You are the adult, hopefully, and if you are not and younger, you're still responsible. After your 10th birthday, we need to repair that root so that we can become back connected to our true selves by plucking out the thorn that went in love and belonging and Maslow's hierarchy. And by doing that, by taking the inner walk, all problems can go away. You know, I was divorced. I had many relationship problems, like everybody did in my first marriage and the people that I dated. I was so hungry to not be where I was from, that I was willing to do whatever it took to run away from my past pain and from where I was raised. I thought, well, if I just, married the right person who on paper was the right person, then I wouldn't feel how I would feel. And 10 years later in that marriage, I knew that I was half alive in myself. I knew that everything that was activating in me with friends and people we were around, I was just an emotional activation from one to the next. It was a bit of a train wreck, I'm going to be honest. And I realized that I had these two babies. And I realized that my girls were going to learn this behavior from me. And I wasn't going to have it. I woke up from this slumber feeling like I'm going to be gypped from ever understanding myself. And all we're going to do is hurt each other, which was all that we were doing with our words, with our actions, because we were over parenting and over controlling and over blaming and shaming each other for everything that we felt. We looked across at the other person and said, it's your fault. It's your fault. They look at me and say, it's your fault. All we did was keep score, emotional score. No, you made me feel like this. No, you're like this. Remember that time I did this. All we've done is that toxic, twisted mess that I just left. Moved around the corner, restarted my life, and thought, how can I really get to the bottom of this? And I had started to write this theory on aha healing. And I was getting to a place where I felt that none of it really made complete sense. Even though I had a roots in psychology, I always felt that something was missing. We were only getting to part of the truth. And so I went on a journey. I took myself to Alaska and to Bali. I wanted to understand every healing modality possible. And when I was writing the theory of aha healing, I really wanted to incorporate and honor those other theories from the past. I looked at 30 different therapeutic processes, and I really had to write my own because I felt to get at this core root, to really understand what is at that core root and to pluck out that thorn, I needed to make this process. So if you do check out at the end here, head to our website, please take a look. There's links in the lives to watch more videos. We have a relationship course right now that I think is really one of the best in the world. And I'm going to say that just because I went through all the other ones. I've read all the books. Martha Firminus, I read He's Just Not That Into You, the rules. I went through the books. I read the love languages. And all of it is really wonderful in theory, but it didn't address how do you heal your emotional pain points so you can have the most magical love in your life. And about 6 years ago, when I had completed my own healing journey and also completed much of this theory on relationships, I said, okay, it's time for me to have great love. And I asked for Matthew. And within a week, Matthew appeared. We've been now together 6 years, married for 5. We got married in Tuscany. And he is my great love, and he is my partner. And it has been the most blissful relationship I've ever had in my life, by far, because we each commit to the inner journey and we live in parallel tracks. So check out this relationship course. There's some free handouts here as well. So if whatever platform you're on, if you're on Facebook or if you're on YouTube, all of those links are up. So check those out. And by the way, you should really get a love board as well. So if you haven't got a love board, also head to our site and check all of that out. Bye for now.